Welcome to For Fresno. My name is Gordon, and this is a podcast about what the church is for, not what the church is against. And you can check out all our podcasts at forfresno.com. Today, we have the CEO of LinkCare returning, Dr. Jennifer Smith. And one of the fantastic services LinkCare offers is pastoral care. We have to remember that pastors are normal humans, yet hold great responsibility. They're leaders, yet they're underappreciated. They're shepherds, yet sometimes they lead a sheep that roam in circles. And they're tempted, but because of their status, they often have few friends for accountability. Pastors need our support now more than ever. So let's jump into this conversation with Dr. Jennifer Smith about pastoral care. Welcome to the For Fresno podcast. My name is Gordon, and today we got our first reoccurring guest, Dr. Jennifer Smith. Jennifer, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. We've talked a little bit this week about what we wanted to present in this show to all our listeners out there. And the third prong, let's say, of LinkCare is pastoral care. And so we want to talk about that and why that's necessary. Why do pastors need care? Aren't they perfect? Don't they lead congregations without a hitch? Don't they have perfect people and perfect churches? And that's what people think about Christians. And so we're going to talk about that. But first, let's talk about why that's a fallacy. And maybe learn a little bit about what you do with pastoral care just from the get-go, Jennifer.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me back. This is so exciting to get to talk about this really important piece that we are very proud of at LinkCare. What an honor to walk with these pastors. But I'll tell you, the ones that have it all together and that are perfect and have their perfect congregation, I don't see those ones so much over here at LinkCare. I don't know where they're hiding, but they're not here. So one of the things that we offer our local pastors here in the Central Valley is 5 free sessions. So all they have to do is call into our intake line and say, I'm a pastor and I heard Jennifer talking about these 5 free sessions, and we will connect them with a licensed clinician to walk with them on this journey toward health and restoration, however much that may be, but 5 for sure at no cost to them. It's a really cool ministry.
That's awesome. That gets them going. And usually I think when pastors, and again, I'm not going to assume that all listeners heard our first episode knowing that LinkCare is a counseling center and they provide a lot of resources to missionaries and pastors and people everywhere. But this resource that you have for local pastors is amazing, where they can start and just get jump started with those 5 free sessions about what's going on in their life. And we're going to talk more now about why is that necessary? You think that pastors have it all together. If they're reading the Bible every day, if they're ministering to people, if they've got a board of elders surrounding them, it's like that's like the perfect setup for accountability and Christian growth, right?
Right. I'm really glad you said that, because I think that is the greatest misconception of all time, is that if there's something wrong with you, then it means you are not in the Word, you're not praying faithfully, you're not connected to God. And that could not be further from the truth, right? I mean, that's true for you and I, and that's true for our pastors, certainly. But then alternatively, if you are preaching from the Word and you're really connecting with your congregation at all times and you're serving in the community, blah, 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 you must be fine. You must not have any issues. And as a human species, we're very good at hiding our issues. Right. That anxiety is really difficult to tell on people often, and same with depression. So no, I'm glad you said that. I think that is a huge misconception, and and that's part of my passion, is to work toward getting our community, getting our world to really understand that mental health things affect every single person, no matter what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so let's back up a second. Now I'm going to give some perspective to people, excuse me, about what pastors might be going through, because I've worked in the church world for a good number of years, about 15, 16 years. And as a youth worship leader, as creative director, video producer, just doing a bunch of different things because I believe in the church and I want to help. I have a lot of pastor friends, pastors that have senior pastors, executive pastors, pastors that have moved churches, pastors that have been treated well, treated poorly, all these different things. And all... there was a time in my life where I was like, I really want to be a pastor. and there's a time in my life where I don't want to be a pastor at all, because you see the other side of the curtain. And really, I'm at a point now where the role of the pastor in the American, like, quote unquote, post-Christian nation that we have there, it's tough. It is tough. And a lot of what these pastors are going through, from a congregational side to a spiritual side, is tough as well, because pastors, they're on the spiritual front lines. They are targeted by, the devil and his tactics, and the people that the devil wants to destroy, as it talks about in the Bible, the devil seeks to destroy the lives of humans, are pastors. And you see all these things, or pastors in the news about committing adultery or committing suicide and all these things, and it's really tough. And so, for us to look at our pastor congregation to think that they've got a huge target on their back in that way. And so it is really up to us to help them succeed, not only succeed spiritually in spiritual warfare, but help them win people to Christ, and then also help them see past themselves, because we're now living in a world where the CEO celebrity pastor is growing and growing, and more pastors think they have to pastor that way, or they have to do that. And it's just not true. And maybe it works for some people, but in the grand scheme of things, it plays a lot of mental games on pastors. And so with that as kind of the foundation, Jennifer, tell me about what you see on your side, counseling people, maybe some stats about what pastors are going through. I know pastors are more depressed than ever nowadays. They feel like they work, they're too much. Maybe some of them feel underpaid. I don't know. Tell me on your side, what do you see on that side?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. And I think that I would make the argument that pastors probably need more care than anything else. You and I spoke last time on our previous podcast about this idea of spiritual warfare, not an idea, but this reality of spiritual warfare.
Yeah,
and that
the topic, yeah, I get it. The topic of spiritual warfare.
Yeah. And how people who put themselves, or who are called or put themselves on the front line like this, and are spiritual leaders, they're under attack even more. And those of us who work at Link Care see it all the time. And so we're very aware of that problem, and of the need to pray against it, and to be resource for it, and walk with people, journey with those in it. So it's there, and it's really ginormous. And I think that when I look at stats, or even when I just look at the folks who are seeking us out for care at Link Care, it's really, really big and alarming. I mean, I saw one that said over 99% of our pastors in the world, or in probably US more, we don't have that much around the world, but they're experiencing burnout in their ministry. That's every single pastor is experiencing burnout in ministry, right? And 70% are reporting even dealing with depression. 80% believe that their ministry is negatively affecting them. So these are really important pieces for us to be paying attention to. If you have 70% of our pastors saying, I experienced depressed mood, there's a difference between the depressed mood and the clinical depression. What is our response to that? And what is our responsibility? We're counting on these people to lead us and shepherd us, and yet we're just hoping and willing that they don't be affected by it, and that they don't have any other residual effects. I mean, we're kidding ourselves, right? So what is our response? And that's one of my bigger questions that I'm dedicating some time and energy to in my life.
Yeah, it's kind of like that old joke where there's a flood or whatever, and the flood rises to the house, and there's a guy on a roof, and he prays for God to save him, and a boat goes by with a guy, and he says, "Here, jump in the boat," and the guy says, "No, God's going to save me." And then a helicopter drives by, and it says, "Hey, catch this rope. No, God's going to save me." And then it keeps raining, and the flood happens, and the guy drowns and dies. And then he asks God, "Why didn't you save me?" And he goes, "Like, I sent a boat and a helicopter," and whatever the joke goes, you get it. It's almost like as congregational members, we just sit there and be like, well, our pastor knows the Bible. He knows what to do. He knows how to get over mental issues, or at least that's what we think. And yet we are sitting here and we're looking at Link Care is a great example of a great resource that we can do that we can tap into to help pastors. And we just sit there and we're like, okay, God, well, why didn't you help our pastor? Well, Link Care is here. I sent you Link Care. I sent you other counseling centers or other resources to help pastors become emotionally healthy and spiritually healthy.
Yeah. And you started talking about this, at the beginning. I mean, these are also real people. These are also human people that get into, for whatever reason, whether it's the Moses situation or calling or what it may be, that they end up leading these congregations and sometimes don't knowingly step in as the CEO pastor. It sort of evolves into that later. But that's one of the places that I get really worked up about is they're still human and they do know all the answers. And I know a lot of the answers, but I'm not a perfect parent, I'm not immune to mental illness either. I'm still vulnerable and I still have to do some things to take care of myself. I don't get to check out just because I got a degree in psychology. And so similarly, I would argue they don't get to check out of self-care and impact of what leading a congregation means and what being a spiritual leader means. That is really huge. And I think we've neglected to look at that. We're getting better, but I think neglected to know and understand, how are you being impacted? What's going on for you, pastor, individually?
Right. So how do we approach that? How do we approach our elders and our pastors, and what can we do to help, whether it's Link Care or other things? What are your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, I think gently and softly, nicely.
Pastor, I've seen you've been angry for the last 3 weeks. I think you need to do something about that.
Right. Don't go in with, you look sad. What's wrong?
Yeah.
Why, how is it going for you? But I think just us as a congregation, as a community, to know and understand, there's probably some things going on that I can't see. I've talked about this iceberg effect before. I don't remember if I spoke about it on the last podcast, but the idea that we really only see the very surface of what's going on, and underneath there's all this stuff that you really can't see. And
just like everyone else. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So knowing that, I think already launches us into a position. So, and not to be accusing again, but just to know that there could be something else going on. So can we send them a note and just let them know, I'm praying for you. That was a wonderful sermon. I know that these things take a lot of emotional energy. Praying for you, leave it at that. Or even offering some suggestions, like things that have helped in the past. If you've found some things, I found this book. It was a really great resource for me. I just finished reading it. Thought you might enjoy it. You don't have to say, because I know you have anxiety. It's just, you just do it. I mean, but they're raising families too. And they're trying to figure out grocery shopping and laundry and COVID as a human, in addition to being as a professional and a leader. So I think just offering a resource that I found helpful, or even suggesting Link Care. Hey, I heard this podcast. This person, Jennifer, was talking about Link Care. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they have 5 free sessions. Why wouldn't you do it? Just lobbing it out there and letting it be.
Yeah. And I think that's good. I think what we forget often, and you just kind of sparked more thought with this, is we forget how to be a congregational member. And I say that because many of us just come to church and we are consumers. And I think I think some pastors have enabled that. And that's kind of one of the 3 things that I think pastors need to evolve in: the celebrity pastor, the consumerism of the church, and just helping us with cultural guidance about what to do in our culture. But if we stick on the consumer part with what we're supposed to be as congregational members, we're not supposed to just come and consume. We're supposed to care for our pastor. We're supposed to go make disciples. We're supposed to catch that vision and keep going. And I think a lot of what pastors do is they're maintaining their current congregational members, like people who are at a country club or on a cruise ship. It's not the pastor's job to make sure everyone in the congregation is okay. So that way the church keeps getting money to pay its bills, to pay its salaries, to pay its electrical, plumbing, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that should be, if you as a congregational member want that, then you need to give. If you want to be a part of a church that does excellent worship and excellent teaching and have an excellent staff, then you need to give a lot of money. But But I think we forget how to be a congregational member. Maybe that's a whole other podcast on a whole other day. But there are some things that we need to think about. And the stress, I've seen it on so many pastors, the stress of congregational members coming in day after day. And it's just one, right? So if I have a problem with a pastor and I think I'm just one person, I'm like, hey, pastor, I just noticed this, this is going on, or, something to add stress in their life. That's just one on my end. But on a pastor's end, they get it day in, day out. They get it with people who there's problems with their kids. People are getting divorced. Maybe there's an issue with a staff member. Maybe there's an issue with something he taught on and he or she misspoke up from the stage. And so we need to keep that in mind as we are because it's not about having the best church and being a consumer in that way. It's about lifting each other up, and it's about helping our pastors grow as well as he or she's helping you grow in that way. And so I think that's really important for people to hear is there's you want to be a good congregational member. You want to thrive. You want your pastor to trust you, and you want to trust your pastor. And it comes starting knowing that they're human and you're human, and you both have flaws, and supporting each other in that.
Just a lot more grace, right? We could all use a lot of that these days anyhow, but yeah, I think that we should have some kind of higher standard that, I look to my pastor as
Absolutely.
a spiritual leader and guide in my life. I don't want to assume they're incredibly broken. I hope not, but,
right. Yeah.
But also, I think the other piece for me is taking that step back and realizing, you know what, and if they do seek help and it's known, good on them. I want to praise that and celebrate that with you, and maybe even be challenged to give toward that, because that means that you're really investing time, energy, calories, resources in getting better and healing and growing and evolving. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And there's some things that are so big that you're never going to just solve it with a one-on-one with your pastor. They need people who devote their lives to helping people overcome emotional and mental obstacles. And that's what you guys do. And that's what you guys do on a daily basis. Not only do you have the experience to help people, how many pastors have you guys seen and helped and use the pastoral care side of Link Care?
Yeah, it's an incredible number. So since this pastor care program began, we've helped over 300 pastors with the 5 free sessions. We're looking at about 200 free sessions a year. It's hard to tell in COVID because some things fell off, but over 300 local pastors have come here and been helped and received care. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I think it really speaks to one of the expertise pieces that Link Care has is in working with those in ministry. We've talked about the missionary care piece, on a previous podcast, but with the pastoral part, we know about this stuff, and our clinicians enjoy working with that population and are good at working with that population. So that's pretty neat to have that level of trust in us and allow us to journey with them. Over 300.
And that's local, right? Because this is a local, not program, I guess, but just it's a local reach right now, and it will be bigger someday. But we've got 500 churches in our area, in the valley here, or in the Fresno Clovis area. And not that every single pastor you've seen is the senior pastor, so it doesn't mean that you've reached 300 of those churches, but it is a great understanding to know that 300, to me, it sounds like a lot, but when you hear other stats of like thousands and 10,000s for other random things, 300 could seem small, but when you compare it to 500 churches, that is a ton. That is huge. And I just want to encourage anybody out there to encourage their pastor or their elders or youth pastor, associate pastor, executive pastors to take care of themselves, but to utilize those free I can't talk. Those 5 free sessions.
Yeah.
But even more so, I want to ask you what we can do to help that in a minute. But I think just because I've seen it, I've have friends, I've lived it, I've even used the 5 free sessions myself. I think this should be mandatory for all churches. And I'm just going to make it a challenge out there. If you're listening to this, pastors are wonderful, but again, they're humans and we want to take care of them. It's not because they're broken and they're never going to be, and they're just bad people. It's because we want to take care of ourselves. And I think this should be mandatory in all churches. I think this should happen yearly, every single year for all the pastors that you can afford. And it should be in the church budget. It should be a line item, just as we go to conferences or seminars, or just as we buy resources and books and, whatever, whether we buy new lights for the stage, like make it a line item, because this is one of the most important things you can do to keep your church healthy, getting your pastor and your staff healthy. And so it's almost a no-brainer. It's almost a no-brainer that it should be in every single church budget. And if you need to talk to Jennifer about how to make that work, I'm sure, you tell us, like, how can we help you?
Yeah. And I think that you're right on. It makes me smile because it indicates to me how then we are really enveloping our pastors, and we are really saying your whole person is so important to us. And having you here in a sustainable way and not burn out is very important to us as a community and as a congregation. And so we want to invest in you, and maybe even invest in your family. Maybe we broaden that to the marriage. Maybe we broaden that to your children. But regardless, let's start there. Put it in the budget and really let it be known that this is huge. Right. Reaching out to me is perfect. So I can organize and facilitate all the financial parts that need to happen. We have a lot of creative ways that we do this at Link Care, especially in terms of keeping it confidential. One, we are HIPAA, so HIPAA compliant. So this is a federal law that we have to follow. But secondly, we don't want that barrier there for pastors. It's a very lonely position in being a pastor. You don't get to fall apart, right? At any moment. You need to keep it together for various reasons. But what I know is that behind the scenes, it's probably not so shiny and pretty. So I'm not asking you to fall apart in front of your congregation. I'm just saying within yourself to know what's happening and ask for the help. So and
that's okay to be not all shiny and pretty. That's what we're saying. Like understand that and be okay with that, but then don't just live there. Don't live where things are going to go bad at home. Try to just seek help. There's no problem with that. There's no issue with that.
No, and we know about that, and we will take care of you, and we will make it so that it is confidential, and nobody has to know about that. And so, we have some really cool things that we've worked out around the community for pastors to be able to access these resources. And in addition to, we have local churches that are partnering with us monthly to give. And so no questions asked. If someone from their, church comes, we just say, welcome, come on in. I'm not going to bill the church, right? So we have a scholarship program going for that. So it's, there's a lot of neat ways to do it. And I would say, just start with me and I will, I'll get it facilitated. We will get it going.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm going to go ahead. I don't like beating a dead horse all the time, but I'm going to beat this dead horse because I think it's so important. Just made me think, like, if you were, let's say, a football star, NFL football star, you wouldn't go back on the field with a broken leg, right? They've got doctors and trainers and people to assess players and how they're doing health-wise constantly. And this is just in that same realm where you need to surround yourself with doctors and trainers and these counselors and people like Link Care to go out on the game. I had a pastor, every single Sunday to him was game day. And I think that's great, because it is like you want to train people, or even a general to his soldiers. Like, you don't want the general to be mentally unstable or hurt all the time. You want the general to train his soldiers appropriately to go out and do battle on the mission field.
Yeah. And I in the congregations I've been part of, I've seen how we value the Sabbath day, especially for our pastors. So often they have a Monday off or something, or a Friday off, right? They get a day during the week that they're not answering emails. They're not supposed to be in the office.
Not supposed to be, yes.
I hope they follow it, but I doubt they do, right? But what we also know about rest is it's a really important place for connecting to God and discerning and figuring out what is the next thing, right? So it's a settling kind of component. It allows me to really hear from the Lord and be in touch and in tune with what's going on in me. But we have to do that so that we then have the energy to move forward and keep going in our lives.
Absolutely.
You've got to add, marbles back in the jar. You can't just always be taking them out.
Right.
What's adding to it? And sometimes it does look like therapy and sometimes it doesn't. But often what we see is the therapy part is so helpful for kind of recalibrating and saying, oh, that's right. I strayed a little bit this way, but these are the things that really help me to be good at my job, but good with my family and a good friend and a lover of the community. So,
right.
We can't preach it enough. I mean, it's just invaluable.
Yeah. And ultimately, you're a pastor, and the greatest thing that you can do besides preaching and praying for your congregation is model. And if you're pursuing health and you're modeling to your congregation that's important, then they're going to do it and take and value that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to a pastor just yesterday, and he was sharing with me how he started in marital therapy with his wife, and they weren't on the brink of separation or anything, but just needing to work some stuff out and needing another person there for them. Yeah. And he ended up disclosing that in the midst of a sermon. And he said he has never received so many emails, texts, phone calls after that, just saying, thank you. Thank you for normalizing this and sharing this. My son felt weird about it being in therapy, but now, his favorite pastor's there, or we just haven't taken that next step that we've needed to take. How did you get started? And it's, he didn't anticipate that it was going to pull the stigma down the way that it did. He kind of felt really vulnerable and awkward about sharing it, of course, but, how God used that to me. I mean, it just gave me chills talking to him. I was just like, I am so proud of you, first of all, for taking this step, for sharing that. And I'm so grateful for your congregation now. Look at that ripple effect, So it's, you don't have to disclose everything, but when it feels right, go for it.
Right. And obviously that person felt like it was right.
Yeah.
Well, and we're just going to wrap this conversation up, Jennifer. I appreciate you being on the show. And again, to the pastors out there, we want you to be healthy. That's the point of this podcast. And we're excited for what you guys are doing in your ministry. If you're following Christ, if you're praying, if your goal is to make disciples, who make disciples, at the end of that, God says, and I am with you. In Matthew 28:20, I am with you when you make disciples. I am with you. I'm going to help you. And that's what we need. We need help from God. We need help from other people seeking God. And that can be Link Care, and that can be your elder board. It can be a bunch of people. And so we want you to be healthy because we want you to lead well.
Please.
And that's our heart.
Yes.
Cool.
100%.
Well, Jennifer, thank you again for being on the show. That's so much great insight. I hope, again, people can reach out to you at jennifersmith@linkcare.org about the 5 free sessions for their pastors, and encourage you guys, again, put it in your church budget. Figure it out.
Yes, please, please. Yeah, make it a priority. And certainly if anybody would like someone from Link Care to come speak to their congregation, we're open to that as well. We just really value the things that we do and the gifts that we can give, especially to our pastors and our local community. So call us.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you again, Jennifer. It was great talking with you.
Absolutely. Bye.
Well, that may have been an eye-opening conversation for some of you. And I want to encourage you to support your pastor. Gather around them, pray for them, support them, and however they need, including that, what we just talked about with Link Care. I want to thank Jennifer for being on the show. And if you were moved by what Jennifer spoke about, to help pastors to get involved in Link Care and take advantage of some of those free counseling sessions, you can email her at jennifersmith@linkcare.org. That's jennifersmith@linkcare.org. And as always, if you want to thank our guests, you can send them a digital thank you. You can go to our website at forfresno.com, find an episode, click on it, and let them know how much you appreciate them. I want to thank all our listeners for watching and listening to these podcasts. Please subscribe, like, rate, review, all the things you can do to help us get the word out. We truly appreciate it. Well, next week we have a challenging conversation with Randy Muherter. He has been involved in various ministries for many years, and currently he and his wife Angie direct Relate for Life. It's an organization that reaches out to youth and young adults with a positive message about healthy relationships. You don't want to miss it. Well, remember, you matter, your impact matters, because you are the church, and we're here to serve our city.